Hannah Clark was 35 years old and had been traveling the world for more than 10 years, working as a flight attendant for one of the best airlines in the country, when she discovered something that would leave her speechless and put her to the test in every way. She is the protagonist of this exciting and unusual story that I am going to tell you today, in which you will probably be distressed on more than one occasion and also feel very indignant about everything that happens. But for your relief and consolation, I can tell you one thing. In the end, everything turns out well, even if in a way that no one expected. Our story begins during a medium-haul flight between San Diego and New York, estimated to last between 4.5 hours, depending on the speed and weather conditions at the time. Hannah was very used to this type of flight. In fact, she had been assigned to this route for more than 3 years and had a long experience in the skies between the far west and the north of the country. However, this time, the flight would have a surprise that Hannah, nor any other crew member on board, would be prepared for. Hannah was doing the initial flight check when she heard a baby crying from the back of the plane. She turned around to see where it was and found it wrapped in blankets, tucked inside a small wicker basket in the last row of seats before reaching the private crew area and toilets. She first thought it must be the baby of some passenger who must have rushed into the lavatory and would return to him quickly. But she soon realized that no one was there to comfort the child, who kept crying louder and louder. Seeing the baby crying at the top of his lungs, the stewardess rushed to take him in her arms to try to calm him down. The baby's cries were very loud, and the other passengers had probably noticed by now and started complaining about the noise. "Shh! Calm down, little one. Shh! Go to sleep. You're safe," she whispered to the baby, rocking him gently to soothe him. The baby seemed to calm down a bit, but she was still very distressed, and her face was full of tears and a really alarming reddish color. It was then that Hannah thought she was crying, because she might be hot, and removed the blue blanket that was wrapped around her. But in doing so, she discovered something that made her even more nervous, and made her realize the seriousness of the matter at hand. Among the folds that enveloped the baby, Hannah found a small, handwritten note. It was a hastily and atolondrously written note, and whoever wrote it was crying, for the paper was crumpled and full of dried drops. The note read, "Please, Elle, take care of my baby. I can't give him the life he needs. I am so sorry." It was a distress note, most likely written by the child's mother and the person who decided to abandon the child on a plane. It can't be. Oh my God, what am I going to do now? This baby needs its parents. I have to tell the captain immediately and report what has happened. This is very serious, exclaimed Hannah, holding the baby tightly to her chest, trying to stop him from crying, but without success. Hannah stood there in shock for a few minutes, rereading the note so many times that she ended up memorizing it. It was then that she realized that there was something else written on the back of the paper. She hadn't noticed it because it was written on one edge and in tiny handwriting. It was a series of numbers followed by a line of dots and dashes. It looked like some kind of coded message. It didn't make any sense to write something like that behind the note with which you leave your baby, but there was no doubt that she had written it for a reason, and Hannah had to find it quickly to solve the mystery. Immediately afterward, Hannah sprang into action and alerted the cabin crew about the baby she had just found and the note she had discovered hidden in her blankets. "Sir, I think we need to act as quickly as we can. This baby has been abandoned, and his parents and relatives could be anywhere looking for him," urged Hannah, who was still holding the child in her arms. As soon as the captain heard what had happened, he quickly contacted the airport to inform them of what was happening on the plane and shared all the details he knew about the situation. The approximate age of the baby, its sex, the clothes it was wearing, as well as the wicker basket in which it was found, and the hidden note that had been left next to it. In response to the plane's communiqué, a large team of airport officials contacted the police and arranged for immediate medical assistance upon landing. In their search for answers, the police quickly launched an investigation, anxious to uncover any clues that would tell them who had left that baby on the plane. However, They faced the obstacle of obtaining permission to access the airport records, which would delay their mission by several hours. It had been 2 hours since Hannah had found the hidden child, and for the moment they had no substantial leads to follow, and the baby remained in the sky, out of their reach and scrutiny. But the worst was yet to come. During the flight, and while waiting for answers from the airport headquarters, the kind passengers took turns to calm and comfort the baby. The captain decided not to hide anything from the crew, and communicated the distressing situation over the loudspeaker, which was of great help to Hannah, who had not been separated from him at any time, offering her comfort and reassurance from the very first moment. However, all the noise and activity began to overwhelm the little boy, causing him obvious distress. His crying had become unbearable, and no one seemed to know how to soothe him. Hannah tried to calm the baby by singing and playing with him. She even offered him a bottle, as milk and baby food were available on the planes, but he firmly refused. It was then that the flight attendant realized that the baby's condition was much worse than they had first thought, and the signs were becoming evident. As the hours passed, the baby had started to sweat a lot, which worried Hannah a lot, as she had no experience with children. She didn't know how to help him, and felt useless trying to find out what was wrong. She tried to ask other passengers for help, many of whom were parents traveling with their children on board, but they didn't know what to do either. It was then that the baby began to show obvious signs of illness. He was only about 5 or 6 months old and had started to babble unintelligible words. Hannah became increasingly distressed, and as the baby's condition continued to worsen, she panicked. She felt like crying and screaming at the same time. She had never had to deal with anything like this before, and the situation was overcoming her by the minute. "Is there a doctor on board the plane? Please, if there is a doctor on the plane, you must say so. This baby is sick and needs medical assistance as soon as possible. Any kind of advice would be of great help to us," Hannah shouted over the loudspeaker. Her voice showed how anxious she was. Luckily, her pleas were answered. There was a doctor on board the plane who agreed to examine the baby. "This baby has a high fever, his pulse is irregular, and he could go into shock at any moment. His body is too small to withstand the pain. I don't think we have much time. He needs specialized medical intervention urgently. We must land, or this baby could die, sir," said the doctor to the captain of the plane with a grave expression. "Is there nothing you can do here? Try to bring down her fever?" asked Hannah, full of anxiety. It would all be temporary, and the truth is that it could be harmful to the baby to treat him without examining him properly and finding out exactly what is wrong with him. We need to do more tests. There is nothing more we can do for him up here. Keep him well hydrated and give him some medicine for the fever, but little else. We must land, sir," said the doctor, looking at the baby with concern. In response, the flight control team opted to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport for the sake of the baby. Everyone was determined to look after the baby's welfare first and foremost, and then to unravel the mystery of who the baby's parents were, and why they had abandoned him in this way. Meanwhile, on the ground, police had no idea where the baby's parents were or how to reach them, despite their diligent efforts and a review of hundreds of images captured earlier in the day by airport security cameras. There was no evidence that could help them unravel the mystery, and in the meantime, the baby was still flying through the sky without being able to receive the medical attention he needed. On the plane, things had not improved in the last few hours either. The nearest airport was still an hour away, and the baby's condition was getting worse by the hour, and the doctor quickly moved to the baby's side to keep a close eye on his vital signs and prevent the situation from getting out of control. Time was running out, and the doctor knew they had to land in less than an hour to save the life of the 5-month-old baby. Hannah, increasingly frustrated, demanded answers. How had the baby ended up on the flight? Who had abandoned him? She searched for more information, but no one would give her any. She knew someone had to have seen something, and she didn't understand why they weren't talking. Fortunately, after a last hour of flying that seemed interminable for everyone, the plane managed to land, and the baby was quickly handed over to the authorities, who loaded him into an ambulance and transported him to the nearest hospital. The most important thing was to save the baby, and they had already done that. However, there were still many unanswered questions that the crew would have to answer to try to help the police in their search for the truth about the abandonment of the child and its parents. Hannah was the first to give a statement to the police, explaining how she found the child and showing the officers the mysterious note that accompanied it. "In my opinion, this note is the key to the mystery, sir. If you can decipher this, you will have the parents of that baby. I'm sure of it," Hannah told the agents who questioned her. And once again, the stewardess was right, because only a couple of hours after handing the note to the police, her team of experts determined that it was a message written in binary and Morse code. Both messages corresponded to the coordinates of a house in the name of a Lilibeth located on the outskirts of San Diego. In that house should be the answers to all their questions and the person who knew the real reason why someone had been willing to abandon their baby on a plane. Meanwhile, while the police investigation was ongoing, the baby was admitted to the hospital's intensive care unit, where doctors performed tests and procedures that revealed that the baby lacked severe malnutrition. The doctors tirelessly treated the baby as best they could, working non-stop until his condition was stabilized, which they did successfully. With the baby out of danger, the police were able to relax and continue their investigation without the added pressure of not knowing whether the baby would survive. With that hurdle overcome, a team of police officers quickly moved to the coordinates they had deciphered on the encrypted note, which led them to a small house in a modest suburban neighborhood. At first, it looked like the place was abandoned. Then they saw a light come on and knew there had to be someone inside. They had a search warrant, but when they knocked on the door, no one answered. With permission to break in, they decided to break in through the front door. But once inside the house, they found something they hadn't expected. An elderly couple, completely surprised and with their arms up in the air, staring frightened at them from their couch. This was certainly not what they expected to find. The elderly couple were stunned when police burst into their home, demanding answers about the identity of a baby and how it had ended up on a flight. They had no idea and no connection to the situation. However, the name of the woman they were looking for was Lilibeth, which seemed to be the only link to them. "Lily, what's wrong with our daughter? Has something happened to her?" asked the old woman in great distress. The police explained the situation to the older couple and asked them to accompany them to the hospital to meet the baby. They were curious about the whole situation, but also a bit hesitant. They were clear that they did not want to get into any trouble and wanted to cooperate as much as possible. Once there, the elders said that they had no idea who this baby was and that they had never seen him before or heard of any family member having a child. The police asked them to contact their daughter, the mysterious Lilibeth referred to in the note, so that they could give her a statement and ask her directly about the baby and what happened on the plane that day. "Of course, officers. Our daughter is on her way. She was at work. That's why she wasn't at home with us. But I'm sure she'll want to help you in your investigation," the old man assured them, very nervous. The police captain on the case, John Murray, couldn't quite see the connection between the elderly couple and their 36-year-old only daughter, Lilibeth. Everything about the baby remained a mystery, and there seemed to be no way of deciphering the enemy of her abandonment. But things were soon to change, and a surprising turn of events would reveal the whole truth. When Lilibeth arrived at the hospital and gave her statement to the police, she claimed to have no connection to the baby and to know nothing about her disappearance on a plane that morning. "I have no idea what you are talking about. I repeat that I have never seen that baby, never ever," Lilibeth assured them, very upset. The captain was about to let her go when the doctors treating the baby suggested that he ask the suspect for a DNA sample. It turned out that while the police were conducting their investigation and searching for the baby's possible parents, the hospital performed all sorts of tests on the child to check his condition, including a DNA test. The hospital's intention was to try to trace the whereabouts of the parents through DNA, but there was no match with their databases. Police asked Megan to cooperate in DNA testing, but she initially refused. However, the police had enough evidence to force Megan to cooperate, so she eventually had no choice but to comply. Otherwise, the police could have charged her with obstruction of justice, and things would have become unnecessarily complicated. The DNA results came back with something shocking that made everyone ask the same question. Who was Lilybeth really? And what did she have to do with that baby? The results revealed that Lily was related to the child with a 45% genetic match. Doctors explained that such a match is usually found between close but not direct relatives, such as grandparents and grandchildren. When the police demanded answers from Lilybeth about the results, she sighed. She knew she could not keep her secret any longer and decided to tell the whole truth for the sake of her family and the baby. That baby is not my son. He is my grandson. My daughter had him a few months ago, but she felt she was incapable of being his mother. It was a one-night stand. The child's father doesn't even know he exists, and she didn't feel strong enough to take care of him. I told her that I would take care of her and the child, but then everything got complicated. The child is sick. He has a congenital heart problem, or so we think. We were afraid and decided that the best thing to do would be to give him up for adoption. We don't have the money to pay for that kind of medical treatment for a baby. I know we didn't act correctly, and I regret it a lot. But we were desperate, Lilybeth confessed, very ashamed and bursting into tears. Following her confession, the police opened an investigation, and Lilybeth and her 22-year-old daughter, Maria, were placed under temporary detention. The boy remained hospitalized for several weeks, but the authorities agreed that he would stay with his grandparents, who had no idea what had happened and were as outraged as everyone else at the reckless behavior of their daughter and granddaughter. The baby's name was Colin, and he did indeed have a congenital heart condition that required constant medical checks and lifelong medication, but would not prevent him from growing up healthy and leading a normal life. Although probably, after what happened that day on the plane and his accident and the way he came into the world, he would never be completely normal. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.